Hey guys, so I'm Vanessa Marquez and I'm going to be talking about energy in exercise. So first slide, why do we need energy? Why is it important? What do we need it for? So energy is like fuel in a car. A car needs gas for it to move, for it to get you where you need to go for you to use that vehicle. So just like a car, our bodies need energy, and our energy is going to perform all the work we need it to do. That's going to get us going. For every cell in our bodies needs energy to perform normally bodily function. That could be moving, that could be breathing, that could be maintaining a heart rate. If you get a cut, you're going to need to heal your cut, so that's going to require energy as well. So we need energy just to maintain homeostasis, stay alive, to have our heart pumping and our organs working. We also need energy to perform a workload. We need to carry something. We need to exercise. We need to jump. We need to sit. We need to walk upstairs. That requires energy as well. So as the workload increases, so does the amount of energy that is required. Where do we get energy from? Obviously, people know we get energy from food. Those are our micronutrients, the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Now, there's a law called first law of thermodynamics, and that means energy cannot be created nor can it be destroyed. So what that means is that we can't take the foods we eat directly and say we're going to use this for energy. It doesn't work like that. So it needs to be chemically modified so that we could utilize and transform that energy that our body needs for we could use it. And that form is going to be in a energy form called ATP. So ATP is adenosine triphosphate. So it's a power source for all our cells' energy. It's the energy currency of a cell. It's just like we would have a dollar and coins in or how we use our money. That's our currency. ATP is our currency for energy. So ATP is what powers all of our cells' energy, and it requires it for accomplishing work in our body to maintain homeostasis. So since ATP is so heavily needed and utilized, all the work it needs to be doing, that's why it's so very important. It's a very important structure to have, and we need it. If not, we won't be alive. Our cells need ATP. So we're continuously always producing ATP. We lose some, we need to gain more. It's a constant cycle. So we need to always make sure we have that energy. Our body's always attempting to maintain a certain amount of ATP. Our body stores 80 to 100 grams of ATP for normal conditions. That's just to maintain a certain limit of minimum of energy we need just to be functioning. If you're an athlete or you require more energy, obviously this number will be a lot higher. So here we have the structure of what ATP is. So ATP is composed of a nitrogenous base called adenine, and then attached it's bound to a sugar ribose, and then it also has 3 phosphate groups here. These phosphates are attached by bonds, which carry high energy. When energy is needed, the terminal phosphate here is going to be removed through a process called hydrolysis. It's going to release energy and form ADP. So that's a adenosine diphosphate because it's only going to have 2 phosphate groups. The energy is released from there, and then it is used by the cells to carry out all the functionings we need necessary to sustain life. So that cycles, phosphate group's going to come off, recycle again to make ATP. We're going to consume food, break that down, and it's going to cycle again for a phosphate. It's going to be released. ATP, you need that. It's going to require ATP to gain another ATP. So when food enters back into our system, ADP and the phosphate group are recombined again and back into ATP to start the cycle back up again. And that could be explained here in this diagram of what I explained, that the ATP and the phosphates get to detach to be resynthesized to make ATP. It's ongoing energy in, then energy out. And this provides power for this provides ATP for just about 5 to 10 seconds of muscle contraction before it runs out. It's very quick. So on the next slide, we have 2 ways to produce ATP. The 2 ways are going to be aerobically, and then the second one is anaerobically. Aerobically is with oxygen, anaerobically is without oxygen. ATP is produced in 2 areas of the cell, the mitochondria and the cytosol. Cytosols are to carry out the glycolysis process energy system, and then the mitochondria is going to have the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain as well. Those are both going to produce ATP. One does it rapidly, one does it just a lot slower. So I made this diagram to show you how you could really understand, or the way I understand, the 3 energy systems. I have a timer here for the first one because 10 seconds is how quick the first one gets ATP. The 3 energy systems here, glycolysis, citric acid cycle, and the last one, the electron transport chain, they work in real time to keep these levels tipped off. So there's constantly ATP being produced. The powering of these 3 generation system that powers them is a molecule that is strong, it's more stable, and it's stored in our muscle, and that molecule is called glucose. So all you need is 1 glucose molecule to start this cycle, and that's going to start with glycolysis. Glycolysis is then going to have some byproducts, which I will discuss later, to go into the next energy cycle to obtain more ATP, and that's going to go through the citric acid cycle, and it's going to need more ATP again, and that's going to be in the last one, the electron transport chain. In the next slide, I'm going to discuss these 3 a little more in detail. So in the slide previously, I used generators, battery generators. So let's say I have this car, it's an electric car, and it's ran by electricity battery. So that's going to provide ATP. You need ATP to get this car going, just like our body does. It can only store a certain amount of ATP though before it runs out, and you're going to need more ATP to get it going again. So like a car, instead of just having 1 backup battery, we're going to have 3 backup batteries before this battery runs out of ATP. So we have 3 that are going to produce ATP, and they're all going to operate at different speeds. So muscles have a limited supply of energy. So the first one, 5 to 10 seconds, and that's all, and then it's all gone. That's why it's important to keep other energy systems before you run out of ATP. So I'm going to discuss the first energy system, which is glycolysis. It's going to run on glucose, and that's stored in our muscles. And with this process of glycolysis is that muscle that's going to produce 4 ATP molecules from glucose. Okay. And then it's going to use 2 ATPs that it got from there, which it already had from the beginning, and it's going to produce two byproducts, which is 2 pyruvic and 2 NADH. So glycolysis is the fastest of the 3 energy systems. So the next 2 energy systems are going to require oxygen. The first one was without oxygen, anaerobic. The 2 second ones are going to require oxygen, like I labeled here. But because they require oxygen, they're going to use this NADH to produce more ATP from the oxygen. At the end, just like from the beginning with the 1 molecule glucose, our body cells can now create a total of 38. So 34 ATP here with adding 4 ATP that I got from the first system. Added up, you're going to get 38 ATP in total. So I also wanted to add that I put in here an arrow for fats and carbs, because fats and carbs is the only way it could go into our bodies is through the form of glucose. And then with protein needs to be broken down into amino acids so it could enter straight into the citric acid cycle. On the next slide here, instead of it being the car diagram with the generators I made, this is the actual way it should look. So you have glucose first in the glycolysis, and then you have a byproduct pyruvic. When you run out of no oxygen, it's going to go into a phase called lactate is the product, and then when oxygen is available and used, it's going to enter the mitochondria and go into the citric acid cycle to produce ATP, and then from there it's going to go onto the electron transport chain to produce even more ATP because oxygen is available. Also wanted to add, I drew this diagram like I did the car earlier here. So we have pyruvic is going to have a byproduct called acetyl-coenzyme A with glycolysis. And I wanted to note that when oxygen runs out in these 2 cycles, in the citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, it's also known as, and when the electron transport chain, when you run out of oxygen, that's it. Oxygen's done. It's going to run out again here. So where is it going to go? To this energy system, glycolysis, where it doesn't require oxygen. It works anaerobically. So, but then pyruvic acid here is going to build up into a product called lactate. And that's going to run out. When pyruvic acid builds up, then it's going to run out of, your body's going to fatigue after that. And once that system is done, that's it. No more ATP can be produced. And your body's just fatigued and you can no longer work. So again, if the exercise intensity is too high and oxygen's not available here anymore, it goes back into glycolysis. The pyruvic turned into lactate, and the environment just becomes too acidic. Lactic acid builds up. You're eventually fatigued. Muscle contraction comes, and you start to cramp up, and that's it. Process is done. Now you can modify your threshold to when you do run out of oxygen so you don't fatigue soon, and that is going to be through training. So if you train with cardio, you will increase your burn rate so you don't fatigue sooner, and your body can stay aerobically, and your body can be more efficient delivering oxygen to your muscles. Here on my last slide, on the 3 energy systems, the first one, which was last only about 5 to 10 seconds energy. These are going to be athletes who need a quick burst of energy. They're going to be sprinters, maybe football players, quick, high endurance things when they require a little short of energy. So the next one is going to be anaerobic lactic energy system. This is a medium to high burst of energy. It's only going to last 10 to 2 minutes. And these are going to be football players or baseball. And then the next energy system is aerobic with oxygen. And those are for low intensity, long distance runner. I'm trying to wrap it up, but yeah.